Hello, and thank you for joining us. Today, we hear from foster and adoptive mother Amy Calder as she shares her testimony and the struggles that she has faced as a foster mom. We hope that today's episode is encouraging, enlightening, and as always, an inspiration. Enjoy.
Hello. Today we're going to hit a subject that we really haven't hit. I think we talked to one parent that kind of talked about single parenting, but we're going to be here with Amy today, and Amy's going to really kind of give us a different insight on single parenting. And before we get into that, I just want you to know who Amy is. I'm learning a lot about Amy lately, and I'm just so happy that I get to see her once again. And Amy, how long have you been fostering or adopting? Kind of tell us where you are in this space.
So I started training for being a foster parent in the fall of 2017.
Okay.
And then my license came in January of 2018, and I received my first baby came, I think, February of that year.
Okay.
So that's when I started. Uh, and I started with I'm trying to remember how old he was because after a while you kind of start the ages all seem to run together. He was, I believe, 3 or 4 months old
Okay.
when he first came into my home, and then when he left, he was 8 months. So he wasn't there long, but
Hmm.
he made a very big impact on me.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
And I love that you said he made such impact on you because we always hear, oh, you're such a blessing to those children.
Yeah.
Oh, you this, but people fail to realize they are such a blessing
Oh
to
yeah.
us
Definitely.
and on us. So great. Now, also, I know you said that you received, so you are single. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And some people really feel that you can't be a single parent and foster.
I'm gonna tell you that it's hard to be a
Mhm.
single parent and foster. Um, and so you really need a support system, and I've got a good support system. My mom has always been there.
Yeah.
She has been my daycare provider. She has
Hmm.
been my respite provider for a lot
Wow,
of
that's a
it.
blessing.
She went to training with me. I mean, every single training that I went to, she was there beside me. She got certified as a respite, provider. So I had that strong support system with my mom. And so, but she's not there 24 hours.
Hmm.
She has her own home, I have mine. And
Oh,
so, if I'm tired or I don't feel good, there's nobody to get up
hmm.
with the babies. There's nobody to take care of that. And so there's a lot of things that are hard. It makes it a little bit harder, but it's not impossible. It
I,
is possible to be a single parent and to be a foster parent. You have to have a heart for this ministry, and it is a ministry. Um, you have to be willing to open your home,
hmm.
at all hours of the day and night. You have to be
Yeah.
willing to take a child who may have a lot of trauma, and they may be
Right.
outwardly expressing that trauma
Hmm.
when they come into your home, and you have to be prepared to know that I'm going to have to somehow break through that barrier and that
Right.
wall that they've put
Hmm.
up when they come into your home. And then um, you have to know that they may or may not stay, and that
Wow.
it doesn't matter how many times people tell you. I've been told so many times, I don't know how you do this. I could never
Hmm.
do this. I would get too attached. Like, I'm not attached.
Right.
When I was doing my training before I was certified, they would tell me, you want to bring the child into your home, you want to make them a part of your family, you
Hmm.
want,
Hmm.
to do the same things with them that you would do with any other, of your biological children, any of your children that may be adopted. And so, they would tell you you have to do this, but they didn't tell me what that would feel like. And so that first baby, when he left, they, at the time it was CPS. And so CPS came and they picked him up to take him to a kinship placement. And when they closed the door and walked away, I broke down. My mom was there and I completely broke down and sobbed in her arms because it was like my heart was ripped out, because for 5 months, and it may seem like a relatively short time to a lot of people, it's not, because to that baby, that was like most of his life.
Right.
And for me, even though it was only 5 months, it felt longer, and he still felt like mine. And at the time, I didn't have any other children. He was the only child that I had. And so they didn't prepare me for that. They didn't prepare me for the goodbyes. And so I think that that's part of the hard, is that you have to know, yes, it may be hard, but you can do it. That you never know what you can do until you actually do it.
Right.
And I didn't know that until then. And I, subsequently, I now have a foster child in my home, and that's the 14th child that I've had since I started doing foster care.
So you didn't give up?
I didn't give up.
Okay.
And I would tell myself, I'm not going to get as attached. I'm not going to get as attached. And I would walk into it, with a defense up, and within, days, I was attached. It never mattered. I was never able to detach myself from that child, because I wanted to treat them with all the love and the care and, the affection and everything that I knew that they obviously probably were not getting in their biological home, or they would still be there, I have only, I've when you get into foster care, you're able to, pretty much like set the tone for the children that come into your home. You're able to say, I don't want a child with a whole lot of health issues. I don't want, I don't want a child, above this age, or, all these things that they ask you. And so I had decided that, because I was fostering, but my ultimate goal was foster to adopt, that I wanted to take children from birth to 3, and I didn't want to go above that.
Okay.
Because I thought, older children, I wasn't sure I was prepared for the trauma, and to really put everything that I had into that. And now probably, I mean, I might could, I don't know. I don't know what I'm capable of until I do it. So, so that was what I had decided upon. And so all of my children have been, small. And you would think that those kids wouldn't have trauma, but you would be surprised. And so that's another hard thing to realize, is that just because you are taking a baby who is a month old, or 6 months old, or a year old, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be dealing with behavior or trauma, or outward appearances of different things. And so there were all these things that just, I wasn't told, when I started training, that I've had to learn along the way. And a lot of times that's also it's not just the hard things that you're going to be dealing with in your home as a parent, whether you're a single parent or you are a 2-parent household. You're not told all of those difficult things that you're going to be dealing with in the home, but you're also not told about the difficulties that you're going to have with the system. And the system is probably in some ways even harder to reconcile.
Exactly. And we're going to kind of talk about each one of them, because first of all, even though you get training, you can never get training for everything that's going to occur, because you don't even know what's going to occur.
Right.
And every child is different.
Yes.
Every child is different and has a different situation, different circumstance. So different experiences are going to come. So that's a heart of it. The heart of it is that you leave with a certain thought process and heart to get ready to foster. And then the heart is when you actually begin to foster. And you find out that, wait a minute, I can't use this strategy that I thought I was going to use because of whatever hindrance that comes, or that barrier that's there. And it could go from, just the way the child responds
Mm-hmm.
to maybe it's the disability of the child, or uh, the child just IQ, or how they deal with things, or the trauma that is being imposed upon them, to how they react to that situation. So it's a lot of heart in fostering that we have to deal with.
Right.
And what actually exaggerate that heart is all the unknowns. Our workers do not know everything,
No.
because remember, they just got them to place them into your home.
Yeah.
So they're still collecting information while you're loving on that child, trying to figure out what's going on. So investigation is ongoing.
Oh yeah.
And with a child in foster care. So that's very, very hard. And just the child doesn't even can't express to you what's going on. And it's not just because of age, because like you said, trauma is in all children. You would think that, and I don't know why we would think that, but it's a natural thought that a baby will not come with a lot of issues.
Right.
Well, a baby is in the mother for 9 months,
Yeah.
10 months. And therefore, with that being going on, whatever that parent went through, that trauma has initially went to that child.
Yes.
And hit them directly.
Right.
So we have newborns that's actually strung out on drugs. How can we deal with the system that's not perfect? So when we talk about some heart in the system, tell us about that.
So, when you get those calls, whether it be, during the day, the afternoon, or the middle of the night, when they say, hey, we've got a child, you're usually not given very much information. And and then even when you get to where they get to your home with the child and they're placed, a lot of time the investigator or whoever is doing the placement also doesn't have the information. Right. And so you're left with a lot of those unknowns that you talked about, Nikki. And so those are things that you're learning about on the fly. And I've noticed too that, I've had some workers with either CPS when I first started or Empower Now, who are really good with communication. And then I've had more that are not good with communication. It's like, you don't get any information after they go to court. You don't get any information on updates. Even when they come out to your house for those visits every month, they're not really giving you much. And so, and then just being a part of the foster community, I've heard horror stories from other parents about, the things that they're dealing with their worker. And, they're not being told anything at all. And they're constantly in limbo with these children, and they're not sure, are they going to be here tomorrow, or are they going to be here forever? And so that's one of those things that you're kind of like, I've always said that I feel a little bit like a redheaded stepchild where the system is concerned, because it's like they bend over backwards for the bio family, but then the foster family, who is actually doing the 24-hour care and doing all of the things that they're supposed to be doing with these children, all the doctor's visits and all the dentist visits and all the the therapy visits that they have to go to, and all of the extra stuff, and making sure that their education is taken care of, making sure that all of their other all their needs are taken care of. They kind of treat the foster family a little bit like they don't matter. And so that's really hard to get past, is like, why are you not giving me the same concessions that you're giving this biological parent who, it may be a parent like I've currently got a child in my home who, this is mom's 5th child, and she doesn't have custody of any of them. And so it's like, it's hard for my brain to say, and the human part of me to say, why are you bending over backwards for this mom who has had 5 times to get it right and still has not gotten it right? And that's where I have to learn that you have to sometimes give a little bit of grace to that bio family. I mean, I certainly believe people are totally able to change. I believe that people are able to make the change for the better. I've seen people who have been, they've had addiction issues their whole entire life, and then they get to a point and then they get clean and sober, and that's how they stay the
Right.
rest of their life.
Right.
And they're able to then change and minister to other people who have addiction issues, and they're able to help the community, and
Hmm.
participate in resources. And so I do believe that people are capable of change, but sometimes that human in me
Yeah.
says, no, 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 this is not right. This is not right that you're giving mom or dad or
Hmm.
whoever it is all these different chances. And so that's hard. That's one of
Right.
the hard things,
Right.
at least for me. I don't I'm sure there are other parents out there that probably it's the same.
Most definitely.
But I had a child that had come into my home several years back, and my daughter, who I adopted at the time, was an infant. And this little girl was a little bit older. She was already, I think she was 18 months old. And when she came into my home, they didn't really have a whole lot of information about her. And she started showing some aggressive tendencies towards my daughter. And so, here's my infant who is small in size because she's a very
She's
petite
young.
little
Hmm.
girl. And here's this child who is twice her size who is pushing her and hitting her and sitting on her and doing all these things.
Hmm.
And so unfortunately, I got to the point where I had to say, I can't keep taking care of her because
Right.
it's to the detriment of my daughter. And so at that point, I had to let my caseworker in my agency know, hey, we need to find another plan for this child because I'm worried about my daughter's safety.
Hmm.
And so, they found um actually a kinship placement for her, and they moved her. And on the day that they moved her, the caseworker who I had been speaking with for the last month and a
Hmm.
half while she was in my home tells me that when the child was born, that she was born not breathing, that she had to forcibly be removed with forceps during a live birth, and she was not breathing. And so they don't know what medical issues that
Right.
was causing. And I thought, okay, wait a minute. And it was earlier in my foster care journey, and so there were a lot of things that I didn't know, and a lot
Hmm.
of things that
Hmm.
I wasn't, was not prepared for at that time. And I thought, I might have approached this differently had I known that this child had that trauma. And so I've had to learn through my subsequent
Hmm.
placements that you have to think about what all could be there. My daughter was born with drugs in her system.
Hmm.
She was born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate, and so she was in the NICU for
Hmm.
17 days when she was first born. She was a failure to thrive baby. So a lot of cleft affected kids are failure to thrive because they have difficulty with the sucking motion when they drink because of no palate. That palate is
Right.
what helps us do that. And so, she was put on a feeding tube, an NG tube in her nose, and then she at one point got a G tube, and so she was on a feeding tube
Right.
pretty much for the first 2 years of her life.
Right.
And she's, like I said, always been smaller in size. And I've ha- I've had to kind of think about the fact that because of that drug exposure, I
Hmm.
don't know what I'm going to be dealing with because you don't
Right.
know what's going to manifest itself down the line. Now we're currently dealing with some hearing loss,
Hmm.
and so um, I'm so grateful that the school district here where we live is they've got a deaf and hard of hearing program.
Yes.
They have worked with me since she was 3. She's been, part of their program since she was 3. And so I'm able to get those resources with the school district. Children's Health has worked really hard with me. They've also
Hmm.
got a deaf and hard of hearing
Yes.
agency through Children's Health. So they've been very helpful. If it comes down to, we need hearing aids, I know where I can go. So
Yes.
there's a lot of unknowns that comes with a child who has has trauma from that reason. And then there's other trauma. I've had kids who have a food deprivation issue because they weren't fed.
Right.
And so when you start feeding them, they don't want to stop. And so there's just so much that if there's no way to prepare for it all, there's just no way.
Right. And and I wanted you to kind of talk, because I know a lot of parents out there are saying, oh, I've had that child. I had one like them. I know exactly what you're talking about. And they're resonating with you so many ways and so many different levels. Even with, if we back up, talking about, okay, well, CPS didn't tell me this. One thing that we have to, or no, let's back up to the bio parent. Let's start there, because that's a huge heart.
Yeah.
And that heart hits your heart, because you're saying, wait a minute, God, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. Everything I'm told to do. Why are they getting so many chances? And I've asked this question myself. I don't have any answers. Yeah. All I can say is that I had to remind myself that every parent has rights. That's the first thing. I have rights to my own bio children. They have rights to their own bio children. And then I always reflect and try to see, if I didn't have the support system that I have, if I don't have the connections that I have, where would I be?
Right.
So we have to kind of, say, okay, by God's grace and mercy, I'm over here.
Right.
And they're over there. But even with that, it's like, okay, Lord, they still said 6 months. So why is this now been a year and a half? Okay, so after those rights, I have to remind myself that I signed up for this. God called me for it, and I said yes. However that sign up looked, I agreed, or I just gave up. Okay, I said, okay, Lord, I surrender. Whatever your agreement was, I signed up for this. This is what I said, Lord, use me in. I'm available. I'm ready. I'll be your vessel, whatever it may be. Right. So it wasn't hard for Jesus. Why? It wasn't easy for Jesus. Why would it be so easy for me? What makes me better than him? So I've gone through all that thought process, and I had to just say, okay, Lord, this is why you say you know the plans. We don't have an idea, because this makes no sense to me. No. My own story doesn't even make sense to me. So how could I put their story, in the right places and find out all the puzzle pieces? So all we can do is be that vessel. And with CPS, I had to truly realize that they don't know. They just don't know. No. An investigation has to go out. But let's think about this. And I've had so many years to think, because it just makes no sense to me. Yeah. That I had to think, where are they getting their information from? Do you know the first information comes from the parent?
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to take my kids, why am I going to tell you all my information?
Right.
So now this is the investigation that you're going to have to get information from me. So when I went back and actually read my children's file, it made more sense to me. Yeah. Because that initial investigation, that interview, Mom said, I don't know who's the dad. I don't know who's this. I don't know. Have anybody in the family? No. Right. It was all just, those type of answers that maybe I would have got given if I was in that situation, because I don't want you now dealing into my business even further, finding more things to, count against me. So I had to realize, and it kind of started sinking in, making more sense. This is why they couldn't know anything, because they're getting it from the source, from the parents. So and then until the child feels safe enough to start talking, sometimes, and if they can talk, sometimes you won't get to know. No. And with drugs, those things don't come out till later. How many children have you had in your home alone at one time?
At one time, 3.
Wow.
Well, and that, I'd always said 2 is my limit at a time. And so last year, at the beginning of the year, well, I think it was April, actually, I got a call that there was a child that had previously been in my home the year before, was back in care. And this baby, I got 3 days old. From the hospital when he came, and I thought that he was going to actually be a permanent member of my home. And so I was like, no, that's my baby. He's coming here. But I already had my daughter who was 4, and I had another little boy in my care who was a year old, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And so, when you talk about you're not crazy, believe me, I felt like it because there were so many days. And so, you know, so I said he has to come back. So I turned my house upside down. I moved my daughter into the smaller room. I put the boys in the bigger room together so I could put 2 cribs in there. Um, you know, I suddenly became a mom to 3, and the boys were a month apart. So it was like I had twins and then a toddler. And so that was that was completely crazy to me because it was like, what am I doing? And we talked about the trauma. Well, when he left my home, he was almost 9 months old when he left, and he went to a kinship placement out of state. And when he came back into care, he came back into care for medical neglect. And the child that came back into my home was a completely different kid than when he left me. He was, I turned around at one point, and when he was, he's mobile and he's walking, he had somehow opened the oven door. Now the stove was off, but he had opened the oven door and he was sitting on top of it. I had turned my back for seconds. So that meant I had to go buy a stove lock. I had a stove lock so that he could not open it. I had to start removing the silverware tray out of the dishwasher because I would wash dishes and the knives would be in there, and he would open up the dishwasher and he would get a knife out and he would just start walking around the house with it. Wow. And it was like, oh, oh no. So I had to, so there were all these things that I had to start doing with him. Right. That I didn't have to do before. I never had those issues before. And it's like you had said before, one kid, the next kid's different, the next kid is different, the next kid is different. You don't know, you have no idea when that child comes into your home how they're going to be. And then once they get comfortable in your home, they change again. Because, I've had babies come into my home that are crawling and, some that are walking. And, when they first come, they want to be held and they want to, be right by you, and they don't move around a lot. And then when you start seeing them venture off further into the house or, this way or that way, and they're doing things more on their own, then you see, okay, they're becoming comfortable. They're seeing, and so they change even then. And so you never know. But I was like, no, this baby, he's mine. He has to come back. And so I had both of the boys for about 8 months. And
so you had 3 kids for 8 months.
I had 3 kids for 8 months. I at one point in time thought that both boys were going to be eligible for adoption. And then and that's another thing that you also have to realize, especially if you're in it for foster to adopt, is that those workers with Empower will tell you, they'll ask those questions. Are you willing to be a permanent placement for this child? And then it kind of turns something in your mindset that then starts thinking of them as your permanent child. They are your forever baby. And then I've always said, until the ink is dry on the adoption paperwork, you cannot believe anything about they're going to permanently stay here, because something can always change, and it
most likely will happen, or be prolonged or delayed, and it's easy to say, but it's hard to do.
Yes, it is.
It's easy to say, because just like you were like, okay, I'm not going to have any more attachments. Yeah, right. These are children. They're, they're lovable. They're sent to you, and more than that, because God so loved us, you're able to love them. So you want them to feel that, feeling in love. And why would we want a child growing up in our society who's never been loved before?
No.
Can we even imagine what kind of world this would be? We think about the world we have now, and some of our kids are being loved. So think about if none of them are loved, what type of world we would be in. So we have to take that, for instance, that it's our job. God has called us to love. and care for orphans, care for widows, and be there. So when we don't do what we're supposed to do, then how can we say that we are children of God?
Right.
We have to fulfill His word as well. And that's what we're called to do. That's our charge in life. And speaking of that charge, we're talking about all these hearts. That's definitely hard, but apparently they're possible because we're still here talking about them. And we have many people fostering today. We still need more, but we do have people fostering today. We have people still adopting. I just went to adoption yesterday. We still have adoptions going on every single day. And we have people still entering care every single day that needs help. So, with just those thoughts alone and all the challenges that we encounter, how have you seen God continue to move in your life that you're still here saying you're fostering?
Right. Well, so, like I said, when you start foster care, you can kind of say, you can set your I don't necessarily want to say,
I hate to say parameters. We have
yeah,
but you have your preferences.
right.
Let's use that word.
Okay, so you set your preferences for, the children that you want to foster. And when I started, did not want a child with, a lot of medical needs because I felt as a single mom, I don't know that I can successfully give that child all they need, especially since as a single parent, you have to work. I mean, there's no getting away from it. You have to have a full-time job, and there are so many things that you have to take care of as a foster parent that you can't do outside of business hours, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And so I had said no. And my caseworker had called and said that my daughter was in another foster home and that they were not going to be able to adopt her, but that she was going to be adoptable, and they wanted to put her just start out with family that wanted to adopt. And so I prayed very hard and for a long time before I agreed um, to be her mom, that I was right. To take her into my home, and that child, even though biologically she's not mine, she's me. She is 110% me,
Right.
from the word go. I mean, we have the same personality, we have the same sense of humor. She does things like I did when I was a kid, and so it's so odd how that has happened. Like, and so I tell her all the time that she didn't grow in mommy's tummy, she grew in mommy's heart, and that God picked her to be my daughter and me to be her mother. And so I've seen that, and then like I said, I'll say goodbye to it to a baby. It'll be time for them to move on. Whether they're going back to their family, whether they're going to most of the time, most of my children that have left for kinship placement. Most of the time, they're not going back to the biological family for whatever reason or another, or the parents anyway. They may be going to another biological family member, but most of them have gone to kinship placements. And so, it breaks my heart every time that I have one leave. And then I'll start thinking, do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to keep doing it? Do I want to keep dealing with the heart? Do I want to keep dealing with, people calling me the day before wanting to come out and do their monthly visits, or, all of these things, all of those hard things.
Right.
Do I want to keep doing this? And I've always, I've tried to pray about it, and I'm like, you know what? If I'm supposed to have another baby, God, bring that baby to me. And there's always been another baby. Always. And, again, my mom and I have talked again, about the current baby that's in my care, because, whenever you take a child into your home, there's always that chance.
Right.
That they could be a permanent baby, your forever baby, or there's a chance that they can't.
Right.
But you have to tell yourself, am I willing to do that or not? Because you have to make that decision early on. And so my mom has asked me, if she does become another forever baby, are you still going to foster? And I was like, I don't know.
Right.
You can't answer that question until you get to that point. And like I said in the beginning, I've had so many people talk to me about, oh, you're such a great person for doing
Mhm.
this, and I could never do what you're doing, and it'd be too hard, and I don't know how you say goodbye. And I mean, it's like they put you on a pedestal and they saint you. It's like
Mhm.
all of a sudden I'm Saint Amy,
Mhm.
the patron saint of the foster babies
Mhm.
or whatever. I mean, it's they exalt you, and it's like, don't
And
do
you're like,
that.
so,
It's like
yeah.
I'm not a superhero
Hmm.
because I'm doing this. It's like you said, it's a ministry. You're called to do it.
Right.
And maybe you can't do it. Maybe
Hmm.
that's not something that you can do. But I would say be open. Be
Right.
open to the possibility. If fostering is not something that you can do, there are all kinds of ways to get
Hmm.
involved in foster care. You can become a court-appointed advocate. You can, work with a foster, resource
Right.
agency. You can become certified as a respite care provider. Oh, we are so desperate for respite. That is another one of the hard things that is
Hmm.
about being a single parent. If I need to run out to the grocery store, either my mom's got to be available or I've got to load two kids in the car and take them with me.
Hmm.
And then it becomes twice as expensive because that 5-year-old's asking for
Everything.
everything. And, so, and then to call a babysitter, it's, I don't even know
Right.
what a babysitter's fees are now, like 20,
Hmm.
$25 an hour. I mean, it's like I can't even leave for 30 minutes, and afford it half the
Hmm.
time sometimes. But, you know, be a respite provider, get involved in some kind of
Right.
part of foster care. And then also just look deep inside of you and pray about it, because I truly believe that there are a lot of people out there that if they really gave themselves the chance to do it, I really do think that they
Right.
could be a foster parent. You don't have to take the babies.
Hmm.
There are so many teenagers, there are so many kids that are teens, and they're
Right.
older,
Right.
older elementary children who are looking for people to be a part of. They want to be a part of a family. They want to be loved.
Hmm.
Um, on Channel 8, there's this, they always do a Wednesday's Child thing, and they all break my heart, and
Yeah.
they all, it's like,
And
okay,
I
I'm gonna
always want to
call,
get
I'm
them
gonna get
all.
them. I want to,
Yeah.
let's take all those kids. But the ones that truly, truly break my heart are the 15, 16,
Hmm.
17-year-old kids who are like, I'm about to age out of foster care.
Yeah.
And all I want is a family.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if it's two moms, two dads, a mom and a dad, a mom, a dad. It does not matter.
It's want
They
someone
just
to
want to be
connect with. Yeah.
somebody to love them. And so to me, they say God works in mysterious ways. It's just, like, pray about it, think about it. I one of the things that I've also been able to do as a foster parent in the years that I've been able to do it, a friend of mine who was a foster mom and had been for a long time, is who she introduced me to foster care. My brother's passing pushed me into foster
Uh,
care because he was 42 when he passed away, and I knew I can't put my life on hold. I can't.
right.
I don't know if I'm gonna be here tomorrow.
Hmm.
And so she introduced me. His death pushed me. But I also know that I have talked to half a dozen people that I have known in my life since I was a child, people that I have met as an adult, and they are now foster parents. And so
That's
that is
awesome.
also something
Yes.
that I've been able to do. And so that's an extension of that ministry for those children.
That's awesome. And that's an extension of your ministry as well, Amy. So we truly, truly appreciate you being here with us
Happy to be
today.
here.
We appreciate you for talking about the hard things that make it hard for fostering as well, and the real things, because all of us feel it. All of us, if you've fostered for a month,
Hmm.
you've experienced
Oh,
something
yeah.
that Amy has talked about today. But I want you to really key in on what keeps her fostering, what keeps her saying yes to another placement, what gave her daughter today.
Hmm.
Just being available to love, being available to care, and what keeps her sharing with us, not just on this podcast, but also in her family, in her community, with her friends, letting them know that love while you can. love who you can, and love who God has out there. There's so many children that need love, so many children that could need you, could benefit from you. So please consider just being a part of this fostering journey, however that seems to be, and whatever fits your schedule and fits your lifestyle. It might be respite. It might just be being part of that community for that foster child. Might be being an advocate. A child needs all of that. So remember that fostering, the key is reunification. That is the reason we're there. Parents do have rights. We appreciate being in America with rights. So we want to honor that, but also protect the child in that. And that is what the system is for. No system is all together, no system is perfect, but it takes us as individuals feeding into that system to make it better. So thank you for your time, Amy.
Thank you for asking me.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening today. I think what I love the most about Amy's story is her resilience and faith in the Lord. She has faced some pretty heavy challenges, some very big obstacles, and she's remained steady. She's gone forward even though it was hard. So we hope today's message will be inspiring for you and help you as you walk this fostering journey. If you have any questions or comments, any suggestions for topics for future episodes, please feel free to reach out to us. We are always interested in hearing from you. And you can also find the video versions of these episodes on YouTube. Please go over and check us out there as well. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and we will be seeing you again very soon.